Hi guys, welcome back to my channel Lush Gardener. In today's video, we are going to be talking about what are the 4 reasons that your succulent will lose the colors. Now, before we start that, let's talk about what are the 3 primary pigments that we see on our succulents. Of course, there are some more pigments as well, but we will focus only on those 3 pigments because those are the important ones. The first one, I'm sure we all know about it, which is chlorophyll. Basically gives the green color to the leaves or green color to our plants. That is chlorophyll, which plays 100% part in photosynthesizing our succulents. So chlorophyll is the first pigment that helps get that green color on plants and also tends to give 100% contribution in the process of photosynthesis. The second pigment is carotenoid, which has shades of yellow, orange, red. These are the 3 shades that are present in carotenoid. Now, unlike chlorophyll, carotenoid does not partake 100% in the process of photosynthesis, but there is a certain percentage which helps in photosynthesizing the succulents, but not 100% like chlorophyll. Now, the third pigment is one of the most beautiful pigment because that is what tends to make our succulents extremely beautiful. That is what tends to catch our eye when we tend to see succulents, and that pigment is called as anthocyanin. Now, anthocyanin again can have a range of colors, whether it's blue, or whether it's purple, whether it's red, different types of colors. So that is what tends to make our succulents look absolutely beautiful. But unlike chlorophyll and unlike carotenoid, anthocyanin is not a permanent pigment. It tends to fade off. It only shows up on succulents when the succulent is either in its dormant period or when the succulent is being stressed. Now, unlike chlorophyll, unlike carotenoid, the anthocyanin pigment does not partake in the process of photosynthesis. How are we so sure? Remember, this pigment will only show up on succulents when the succulents are dormant. Basically, dormancy, the succulent tends to completely shut down its growth. It no longer is in its growing period. It's not going to absorb water. It's not going to grow. So that's when the succulent tends to go off to sleep and tends to put this beautiful pigment as a blanket on it, which tends to give us beautiful colors on the succulent. That pigment is anthocyanin. But as and when the succulent is going to get into its growing period, the succulent will take off that blanket. It will take off that pigment anthocyanin, and the succulent will start to get a little bit green on the color. The strong, intense color, what was present during the dormancy, will start to reduce because now the succulent knows that it's going to get water. Now the succulent knows that it has to grow. So that pigment will slowly start to vanish and the succulent will look more green in color. This is going to happen very soon with a lot of our echeverias because as soon as we are going to enter into the spring or summer, most of the echeverias will get out of their dormancy and they will get into their growing period. Hence, a lot of your echeverias will start to lose that winter color, which is absolutely normal. You do not need to be worried. The succulent is as healthy as it can be, but the colors will start to reduce and you do not need to be worried. Now, the pigment anthocyanin can again appear on your succulent only when you tend to stress your succulent. So here the succulent feels like it's not going to get water, it's not going to be fed, so it again tends to put out those stress colors. It basically tends to put out the pigment anthocyanin, which again is normal. Stressing of succulents is normal, but there is one disadvantage, that is your succulent, which is already a very slow growing succulent, because of this process of stressing, it will further slow down its growth. Either you can have your succulent to grow in the growing season, or if you want the colors, you can stress it in the growing season as well. Now, of course, you cannot have both. You cannot have a succulent that is growing at the same time it should be very stressed. You can either stress your succulents or you can either let it grow. There is 2 options. You cannot have both. If you're going to have stress colors, the succulent is going to further slow down its growth. If you're not going to have stress colors, it is going to have that normal succulent growth what they have. Now, how are the other ways with which the colors will start to fade off? As I said, when you tend to stress your succulents, that is when the colors come. Stressing basically means you're reducing the watering. You're not going to be feeding your succulent. I don't feed my succulents. That's why you can see there's a lot of color on my succulents. It's been probably 6 to 7 years that I've stopped adding any kind of fertilizers in my succulents. I didn't see any difference in them. So why add fertilizers when it's not required, basically. But it's up to you. from person to person. If you want to add fertilizers, you can. If you don't want to add, it's absolutely fine. The succulent is still going to do quite well. You can see the succulents in front of you. But again, it depends from person to person. If you want to add fertilizers, you can. I'm not saying that it's wrong. It's up to you. My succulents have been doing quite well without them, so I'm absolutely fine. I do not want to waste fertilizers by adding it to them. So the first point is that if you are going to keep your succulents well hydrated, and I'm not saying overwatering, basically you have a balanced watering, the colors will start to reduce a little bit because your succulent is hydrated. The second time your succulents will lose color is when you tend to add fertilizers, especially if your fertilizer has a rich nitrogen. It will reduce the colors drastically because nitrogen is something that tends to give that green color to your plants. So if you're going to have a good amount of nitrogen in the soil, it will reduce the colors drastically. All of those anthocyanins will not be visible. It will look a little bit more on the green side. The third point is lack of light. Of course, if you're not going to give a good amount of morning direct sunlight for 5 to 6 hours, the colors will not show up. It will start to fade off. I wouldn't say it will completely go off, but the colors will not be very, very intense. Even if you're going to keep your succulents in indirect bright light, the colors are not going to be very intense as compared to the succulents that are placed in morning direct sunlight for 5 to 6 hours. So if you are a person who does not receive a lot of direct sunlight, do not expect them to have a lot of color, because that is max what the color the succulent will get if it is kept in indirect bright light. The last is the growing season and the dormancy period. Of course, your succulent will have intense stress colors on them when the succulent is in its dormant period, but the moment the succulent starts getting into its growing period, the succulent will slowly start to lose that stress colors and it will look a little bit more on the green side, which is absolutely normal. You do not need to be worried. So to summarize, the first point is that you're hydrating your succulents too much. Second point is that you're adding in too much of fertilizers and the succulent is not able to show up the colors, especially if you're using a fertilizer that is rich in nitrogen. The third is that you are not able to offer a good amount of sunlight. The recommended sunlight is at least 5 to 6 hours of direct morning sunlight. If that is not being provided, of course the colors are not going to be very intense. And the fourth point is that your succulent is in its growing period, so it's better to let the succulent grow. Don't stress the succulent at this point of time. Don't try to get the colors. If the succulent is green, it's absolutely normal. Your succulent will grow quite well during the growing period, but if you want your succulents to have that stress colors, you can stress it by giving a little bit less water and offering a good amount of morning direct sunlight for 5 to 6 hours. But the only disadvantage with this is you will get that beautiful color, but the growth or the rate of growth is going to reduce further, which we already know that our succulents tend to grow very slow. So you can imagine it will add on a little bit more less growth on your succulent. So it's all up to you. So guys, that's all about it. I hope that this video was helpful to you. If it was, please hit the like button. And if you're new to my channel, please consider subscribing to it. Until then, take care, stay safe and keep propagating.